My name is Dorothea Larkspur, and the day my son's wife decided she had finally conquered me began the way every other gray-skied Thursday begins in Stonebridge, Ohio, with the whistle of the 5:45 a.m. freight train threading through the cold hollows of my clapboard farmhouse. I was sitting at the small pine kitchen table my late husband, Ernest, built with his own scarred carpenter's hands nearly 40 years ago, sipping coffee that tasted as bitter as my rising worry, and wondering, once again, how a mother who had tried her best could end up trapped in her own home by the very child she once rocked to sleep. Marcus and Brittany were still asleep upstairs. Technically, it was Marcus's childhood bedroom, but Brittany had transformed it into a miniature showroom of white marble accents and gold-flecked throw pillows, as though she feared an HGTV producer might burst through the door at any moment and raid her mise-en-scène. Somewhere beneath the avalanche of designer shams lay the faded indigo quilt I sewed the summer Marcus turned 13. He had begged me for a Star Wars comforter back then, and I had promised to buy one after harvest. Instead, I stitched that quilt out of Ernest's old work shirts, each square smelling faintly of sawdust and cedar. Brittany judged it too homespun and stuffed it in the closet. The pattern was repeating itself, each sentimental thread of my life neatly clipped, tucked away, or discarded. Yet I kept telling myself that this arrangement was temporary, that young couples needed help, that I was doing what mothers have done since Eve cradled Cain, making room. What I wouldn't admit aloud, not even to my reflection in the hallway mirror, was that Marcus and Brittany had lived temporarily under my roof for 19 suffocating months, and that the roots of their stay were sinking deeper than the roots of the maple Ernest planted the week Marcus learned to walk. Money was the silent tyrant of our living room. Marcus's tech startup had failed 14 months earlier, collapsing under the weight of venture capital promises that never crystallized into contracts. Brittany's orthodontist salary vanished into a sinkhole of student loans and the kind of couture wardrobe she claimed was an investment in personal branding. When the eviction notice from their downtown loft arrived, or so they told me, I cleared the spare room, baked a lemon pound cake, and said, "Of course you can stay, sweetheart." I did not realize then I was opening both my heart and my bank account as wide as the farmhouse doors. Brittany demanded house rules on her second morning. No dairy milk. She had switched to oat. Kitchen sponge replaced weekly, and could we talk about repainting the living room? The beige ages the bomb. Space. Marcus, for his part, looked everywhere but my eyes whenever the subject of job interviews arose. He spent afternoons hunched over his laptop, fingers dancing across keys, yet never producing an offer letter. Each evening he migrated to the porch, swing with a craft beer Brittany ordered in bulk online, craft beers whose price could have repaired my sagging tool shed roof. I tried earnestly to swallow my pride and remember the biblical admonition about honoring one's children. But honor tastes a lot like bile when you realize your own child has forgotten to honor you in return. The first collection notice arrived addressed to me by error. A beefy envelope from the Horizon Bank of Ohio, stamped urgent in ferocious red. Inside, a polite but firm reminder that payment on the black matte Ford Explorer Marcus leased in his name had been $60. 3 days late, and that repossession proceedings would begin if the balance wasn't brought current with immediate effect. I reread the letter 3 times before sliding it beneath Marcus's door. The next morning, it reappeared on my breakfast plate, sticky with syrup and a scribbled note. Handled. Nothing was handled. Brittany's smile was a polished shield. She wielded it at church potlucks, in the grocery checkout line, and especially in front of my bridge club friends. "Oh, Dorothea simply adores having us here," she would chirp while rearranging my china hutch, and I'm helping her modernize the space. My friends, a chorus of polite nods and pursed lips, couldn't see the way Brittany's fingers tightened around the teacup handles, as though poised to snap them like wishbones if contradicted. I began keeping a ledger in a spiral notebook tucked under the mattress. Dates, purchases, temporary withdrawals from my savings. The grand total fled north faster than geese at the first shiver of October. 3 months in, they had cost me $23,811. No rent, no intention of moving, and no word of gratitude beyond Brittany's airy, "We'll settle up soon, promise." But mothers are stubborn creatures. I kept cooking dinner, pot roast on Sundays, chicken pot pie on Tuesdays, salmon with dill on Fridays, hoping flavor might translate to forgiveness or at least spark conversation. Marcus chewed in silence. Brittany posted artful photos of the dishes on Instagram with captions like, "Farmhouse feast courtesy of my mom life." She never tagged me. I have lived on Old Mill Road my entire adult life, long enough to memorize the seasonal choreography of the maples that guard the lane like sentinels. In April, they blush chartreuse. In May, emerald. And by October, they erupt in bonfires of amber that make even postmen pause for photographs. Ernest and I bought the farmhouse in 1985 for $32,000, a fortune back then. He fixed every sagging beam while I coaxed vegetables from the stubborn clay soil behind the barn. When Marcus was born, we planted a sugar maple beside the back porch. It is massive now, its limbs tracing the sky like arteries, and the idea that anyone might log it for profit makes my stomach knot. Perhaps that history is why I tolerated Brittany's redecorating crusade for so long. She insisted on banishing every relic older than a decade. The antique radio Ernest restored, the braided rugs I wove from denim strips, the copper weather vane shaped like a leaping hare, all relegated to the attic. Visual clutter, she called them, while displaying neon motivational prints that read "Rise and Grind" in fonts that jittered my nerves. Each discarded heirloom felt like a torn page from my own diary. One afternoon, while Brittany was away at a dental conference and Marcus networked at a microbrew festival, I climbed into the attic and sat among the banished treasures. Dust motes drifted through sunlight slanting from the dormer window, and in that glowing hush, I touched the radio's warm wooden casing, pressed its cracking bakelite buttons, and for a fleeting second, heard phantom strains of the blues station Ernest used to love. I cried then, but my tears were not nostalgia. Alone. They were rage that someone had tampered with the sanctity of my memories. I began to understand that Brittany didn't want a mother-in-law. She wanted an accessory farmhouse to bolster her influencer narrative of rustic chic. She posted daily, candid reels of sunrise coffee on my porch swing, never tagging me, always cropping the frame so my wrinkles wouldn't ruin her brand aesthetic of eternal youth. Even worse than her passive erasure were the whispers. Late at night, I would pass their half-open bedroom door and catch fragments. Equity, flipping potential, elder care tax credits. My name reduced to a line item. The house became a chessboard, and each sentimental object a pawn. Brittany slid across the gleaming floor toward checkmate. When Isabella first uttered the word eviction, I recoiled as though struck. The farm had been refuge, not battleground. But over sleepless nights, I saw the battlefield lines forming on their own. Brittany's army of curated perfection against my barricade of history and dignity. She underestimated 2 facts. 1. I had survived breast cancer, 2 miscarriages, and Ernest's too early heart attack. I knew how to outlast storms. 2. I kept records. Every grocery receipt, every Venmo transfer for utilities, every pink copy of a cash withdrawal formed a paper fortress. Still, documentation is not confrontation, and confrontation terrified me. The day Isabella filed the tenancy agreement, my palms sweated so profusely that the pen slipped. I wondered if I had the mettle to swing the final hammer. Then my neighbor, Agnes O'Reilly, white hair wound into a braid thick as rope, appeared on my porch with a mason jar of strawberry. "Preserves! I hear rumblings," she said in her lilting Irish accent. Small towns leak secrets quicker than water through cracked stone. I tried to wave it off, but Agnes placed the jar in my hands, her gaze unwavering. "Lass, a house is bones. A home is soul. Don't surrender your soul to grifters. Grifters. The word hit like ice water, shocking and clarifying. Brittany's endless politeness was a costume. Underneath, she measured relationships in potential returns. I thanked Agnes, walked inside, uncapped the jar, and tasted the summer sweet, fruit of my neighbor's empathy. It fueled me more than any sermon. The game escalated. Brittany left glossy brochures from Golden Horizon on my pillow, annotated with sticky notes, craft workshops every Wednesday, and chef-prepared meals, no more cooking hassle. Marcus texted me Zillow links at midnight, urging me to dream big about downsizing. Meanwhile, they hosted wine tasting nights in my living room, clinking glasses of imported Shiraz over conversations about passive income streams. I noticed how Brittany always hushed the group whenever I walked past, like the matriarch of a museum exhibit who mustn't interrupt the tour. Late May delivered a heat wave that plastered shirts to our backs. The central air struggled, and Brittany insisted we replace the system with a modern unit she had researched thoroughly. Her preferred brand cost $14,000. I suggested a cheaper repair. She called me short-sighted. Marcus sided with her. During the argument, Brittany remarked that certain generations love patchwork over progress. The phrase stabbed deeper than intended, my quilting hobby suddenly a metaphor for my alleged resistance to evolution. That same week, I caught Brittany rifling through the drawer where I kept Ernest's birth certificate and our marriage license. She was so startled she dropped the papers. "Oh, I was looking for the tape measure," she lied. I saw then that Brittany's hustle was approaching a crescendo. She needed documentation to forge the quitclaim deed, which brought me back to Isabella's stormy office and the decision to preempt Brittany by cementing my niece's beneficiary status. Abigail is 27, a public school teacher who still calls me Aunt Doe. She thinks the farm is a wonderland. Leaving it to her felt right, an inheritance of love rather than entitlement. Paying off the Explorer was my opening salvo. But the real shockwave would be the certified letter Isabella promised to serve, a formal 30-day notice of eviction. I dreaded Marcus's reaction, but dread no longer outweighed necessity. In those final hours before the tow truck arrived, I walked the property's perimeter, letting my fingertips brush the wheat-gold grass. The barn cats followed, tails high, unaware their universe teetered on legal filings. I whispered to the maple, to Ernest's invisible presence, to the future Abigail would one day shepherd. "Hold steady," I told the roots and rafters alike. "The storm is almost past." When I returned to the house and confronted Brittany, with the loan release I expected her composure to crack. Instead, she smiled as one might smile at a dull student who had finally grasped the wrong lesson. She tucked a strand of caramel-streaked hair behind her ear, adjusted the pearl buttons of her silk blouse, and said in a voice so falsely tender it made my molars ache, "Dorothea, that was very considerate. You really didn't need to step in." The kitchen clock thunked through a single second. My pulse kept pace, louder than the refrigerator's hum. Marcus hovered beside Brittany, eyebrows knit in confusion, as though he couldn't tell whether to beam at my generosity or flinch at the unspoken reprimand. I laid the loan release letter between us like a declaration of war. "Considerate? No. Necessary. Your car was days from repossession. I won't have strangers dragging vehicles off my property at dawn." Brittany's smile widened, but her eyes narrowed to slits. We had options. Marcus shifted. "Mom, Britt and I appreciate—" "I didn't do it for gratitude," I interrupted. "I did it because I refused to let your negligence smear our family's name. My father taught me debts are like winter leaks. Ignore them, and they ruin the whole house." Brittany reached for the letter, but I kept my hand on it. "You can keep the Explorer," I said, "but don't mistake my payment for permission to keep stalling on your other debts. I've scheduled a meeting with our accountant this afternoon. We'll go over everything." Marcus paled. Brittany's nails tapped the tabletop. She opened her mouth, thought better of it, and closed it again. Her silence felt like the moment when a tiger coils before leaping. I pushed back my chair and stood. 7 o'clock tonight, dining room. Bring every bill, every statement. If something's missing, we'll call the bank together. I have patients late, Brittany said. Orthodontic consults. Then we'll meet when you return, I said. If that's midnight, so be it. Marcus's shoulders slumped, but he nodded. Brittany exhaled through her nose in a silent laugh. Fine, she said, voice velvety as poisoned honey. Midnight. By noon, they were gone. I stood alone among the humming emptiness of my farmhouse, the scent of cinnamon scones still warm in the air, and let the silence settle like dust on the letter-strewn table. I could have cleaned, but instead, I walked to Ernest's tool shed, unlocked the weather-battered door and stepped inside. His scent, the mingled musk of cedar, linseed oil, and pipe tobacco, clung to the rafters. I ran a finger across the workbench he'd built a year before the cancer diagnosis, recalling how he'd whittled a tiny wooden sparrow to perch beside the vise so I'd always have a lookout friend when I came to fetch garden stakes. That sparrow still balanced on its twig, dusty but defiant. I stayed there until noon, heat prickled sweat at my temples, then drove to town, turning the old Buick down Main Street's baked asphalt. The bank's brass letters glinted in the sun. Inside, the air smelled of toner and guilt. Calvin Dorsey, the junior advisor, rose from his cubicle when he saw me. Mrs. Larkspur, everything all right? I handed over the spiral notebook ledger. Calvin, I need to liquidate a CD from the emergency fund Ernest set up in '03. His polite smile dimmed. That's a substantial penalty, ma'am. I understand, but I've decided my definition of emergency includes saving my own sanity. He skimmed the pages, eyes widening at the columns of expenses. They've cost you this much? And more, I said. I want to cut the infection before it reaches the bone. Calvin folded the notebook shut. I can draft a cashier's check by close of business, but may I ask your plan? First, we settle every account with my name tangled in it. Second, we serve an eviction notice. Calvin leaned back. That's, pardon me, bold. Boldness, I told him, is an older woman's right. I've earned it wrinkle by wrinkle. He cleared his throat. Very well. Do you have legal counsel? My niece's firm. We completed the paperwork. As I signed, my hand trembled, not from doubt, but from the slow thrill of reclamation. Each flourish of ink felt like driving another nail into the coffin of Brittany's entitlement. Back home, I cooked chili, letting cumin and smoke fill the rooms where tension would soon sit heavy. At 5:40 p.m., Marcus texted, "Running late, don't wait dinner." 2 minutes later, Brittany posted a story from an upscale tapas bar downtown. Tiny skewers of imported olives arranged like soldiers at attention. Hashtag, chalk or power couple fuel. I set. Plates for one. 9 p.m. crawled past. At 11:12, headlights swept across the kitchen wall. Doors slammed. Their voices floated through the foyer. Brittany's syrupy coo, Marcus's laughter sharp with drink. I remained at the dining room table. The ledger open, chili congealed. They entered. Brittany's cheeks were vodka blushed. She glanced at the cold dinner, then at the clock, and smiled. Midnight yet? Close enough, I said. She slung her purse on a chair. Genuine leather, monogrammed. We're exhausted. Let's rain check. This isn't a game, Brittany. She shrugged off her coat, revealing a sequined top that caught the light in daggers. Can we not do this tonight? I slid a manila folder across the table. These are your unpaid balances. Credit cards, car insurance, medical bills, $38,212. Marcus sank into a chair. Mom, where did you... Marcus, I taught you algebra on that very placemat. You think I can't add? His eyes flooded with a child's shame, but Brittany placed a hand on his knee. We will handle it. With what income? I asked. Your startup folded. Brittany's salary disappears into your lifestyle. Brittany's jaw tightened. You don't understand how business works. I understand living within one's means, I said. You've mistaken my hospitality for weakness. That ends now. I turned to Marcus. Son, I love you, but I won't bankroll your avoidance. He rubbed his eyes. What do you want? Proof you're moving forward. A budget, a job application record, and rent. $800 a month, starting next week. Brittany laughed outright. Rent? In this mausoleum? Brittany, I said. If my home feels like a tomb, there's the door. She crossed her arms. We have rights as tenants. I nodded. Indeed. And I have rights as landlord. 30-day notice will arrive tomorrow. Marcus's breath caught. You're evicting us? I'm freeing us, I said. Brittany smirked. Courts move slow. By the time anything happens, the house might no longer be yours. Those words chilled the room. What does that mean? She picked up Ernest's old silver letter opener, twirling it. Nothing, she said lightly. Just observation. Markets shift. Marcus murmured something to her I couldn't hear. She waved him off. I'm tired, she announced. Meeting adjourned. They left the chili untouched. Sleep would not claim me. I wandered the house, touching old photographs, tightening loose window latches, memorizing the floor's creaks, territory awareness, like a general before siege. Near dawn, thunder cracked. Storm clouds rolled over the fields. Like dark cavalry, I brewed coffee as rain began to drum the roof, each drop a marching footstep. At 7, the doorbell rang. The tow truck driver tipped his cap, asked for the keys to the Explorer, and winched it onto his flatbed with mechanical indifference. From their upstairs window, Brittany shrieked. Moments later, she thundered down the stairs in pajama silk, barefoot on cold planks. You had no right, she screamed. I held out the paperwork. I owned that right the moment my money saved your lease. Marcus appeared, hair wild. Outside, the truck's engine revved. Mom, this is humiliating, he said. Humility, I replied, can be healthy. Brittany grabbed her coat from the banister. We're meeting a lawyer. Be my guest, I said. But remember, every retainer you pay is money owed this household. They slammed the front door so hard a ceramic sconce rattled. Rain swallowed their footsteps. By afternoon, the storm thickened. I stood on the porch in my rubber boots watching sheets of water turn the gravel drive into a silver river. A white sedan fishtailed up the lane. Loaner car, I guessed. Brittany leapt out, umbrella snapping in wind, and dashed inside. Marcus stayed behind the wheel, staring ahead. Brittany stomped into the foyer, mud splattering the cherry wood floor. She shook raindrops off her umbrella, onto my grandmother's rug. Dorothea, she called. Living room, now. I followed her voice. She stood before the fireplace where Ernest's portrait hung, papers clutched in her fist. These, she said, brandishing them, are preliminary filings for guardianship. Thunder boomed. Guardianship? I repeated. Her grin was feral. Of you. Marcus and I petitioned the court on grounds of diminished capacity. It's an emergency order. We claim you're incapable of managing finances, endangering your own welfare. My knees wobbled. That's preposterous. The court only needs probable cause, she purred. A hearing is set for next Friday. Until then, an interim guardian, Marcus, controls financial decisions, including property, including eviction proceedings. She tossed the papers onto the coffee table. Checkmate. I reached for the sofa's arm to steady myself. Lightning flashed, illuminating the rain-smudged windows and Brittany's triumphant posture. She leaned in, whisper soft. You started this war, Dorothea. You should have known I always play for keeps. The wind howled through the chimney. Somewhere upstairs, a window banged open. I felt the house shudder, as if Ernest himself recoiled at the violation. Brittany turned on her heel and glided toward the staircase. Halfway up, she paused, looking over her shoulder. "Oh, and I'll need the spare key to the shed, inventory purposes." I found my voice, raw as gravel. "Get out of my sight," she laughed and ascended out of view. I sank onto the hearth. Marley, the tabby, rubbed against my ankle, sensing distress. I stroked his fur while rain hammered the roof, each drop echoing the panic in my chest. Guardianship. The word coiled like a noose. If their petition succeeded, they could seize every asset, sell the farm, consign me to some bland senior complex, strip my life to bones. I stood, heart pounding, and fetched the rotary phone Ernest refused to replace. My fingers dialed Abigail's office number. When she answered, I could barely push words past my lips. "Sweet pea," I said. "They're trying to declare me incompetent." Silence, then a sharp inhale. "I'm coming," Abigail said. "Tonight. Don't sign anything. Keep every document. I always do." She ended with, "Hold tight, Aunt Doe. We'll dismantle their castle." I hung up, exhaling shakily. Outside, wind moaned through the maples. Inside, an answering growl rumbled, born not of fear now, but of resolve. Brittany had shown her claws. Fine. I had iron ones. I spent the next hours gathering evidence, bank statements, medical records proving my sound health, neighbor affidavits. Agnes dropped by with hot tea and a shotgun glare. "They want a fight? We'll give them a parade." Evening dimmed, lightning flickered, thunder rolled, and a sudden power outage plunged the house into shadow. I lit candles, their flames trembling. Like newborn courage. At 10:15 p.m., I heard footsteps in the attic. Slow, deliberate. I grabbed Ernest's old flashlight and climbed the narrow stairs. The beam cut through dust. A silhouette moved near the dormer, the shape of Brittany rifling through boxes. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She spun, eyes gleaming feral in the flashlight glare. "Collecting proof," she hissed. "Old meds, diaries, anything showing cognitive decline." "You won't find weakness here," I said. She smiled. "Everyone weakens, eventually." Then she stepped around me, descending the stairs as if descending a throne's dais. I remained, heart racing until her footsteps faded. Then I noticed the attic window, unlatched, rain spraying in, dampening cardboard. I latched it, but the wind still seeped through cracks, carrying with it a low vibration in the floorboards that sounded like the distant growl of the storm I had feared all along. Along with it came a revelation. Storms don't merely threaten to break foundations, they expose the rot already hiding within them. The maple beside the porch had survived 52 Ohio winters, each gale pruning away the brittle branches and leaving the heartwood stronger. I would face Brittany's tempest the same way, by letting it strip away the deadness until only solid core remained. I descended the attic steps, each creak a drumbeat of decision. Downstairs, the power flickered back on. The grandfather clock resumed its solemn tick, as if to say time itself endorsed my resolve. I followed the hallway to my bedroom, opened Ernest's cedar chest, and retrieved the manila envelope marked Last Will, Revision 2025. Abigail had prepared the addendum months earlier, but I hadn't yet filed it with the probate court. In it, the farm and every asset passed directly to her, contingent upon my death. Guardianship could not override that future transfer, yet Brittany's petition threatened the interim years. If a judge declared me incompetent, they could liquidate everything before I ever drew my last breath. The thought steeled my nerves. I called Abigail again. She picked up on the first ring, engine noise roaring behind her. "I'm an hour out," she shouted. "Stay safe." "I will," I said. "Drive carefully." I ended the call and slid the envelope into my purse. Then I dressed, jeans, flannel, boots, battle garb. The house hummed with tension, but beneath it I sensed a rallying spirit, as though Ernest's memory and every ancestor who had ever tilled this soil stood beside me. At 11:45, headlights swept across the south pasture. Abigail's Jeep rumbled up the drive, mud splashing. In arcs, she stepped out, raincoat flapping, carrying a briefcase and a thermos larger than her forearm. "Emergency caffeine," she said, handing me the thermos as we hugged. "We'll need it." Inside, we spread documents over the dining room table, the same battleground where Brittany had tried to cow me. Abigail read each page with the hawk-eyed intensity that made opposing counsel sweat. "They're leaning on Medical Exhibit A," she said, tapping Brittany's petition. "A single ER visit for dizziness last August. Did you follow up?" "Yes." "Benign positional vertigo. Resolved." Abigail scribbled notes. "And the falls?" "One knee tweak in the garden. Doctor cleared me." She smiled. "They're grasping at dandelions in winter. We'll file a rebuttal with affidavits from Dr. Hamid and neighbors. Plus, your financial ledgers prove competency." I exhaled, relief mingling with adrenaline. "But we need more," Abigail continued. "Judges like proactive measures. We must demonstrate you've already taken steps to safeguard your future. Power of attorney, living will, naming a responsible agent. Me, if you'll have it." "Of course," I said. "You're my anchor." We worked until 2 a.m., drafting motions by laptop glow while rain rattled the panes. Thunder cracked like a gavel ratifying each paragraph. Near 3, a floorboard in the hallway groaned. Abigail froze, fingers hovering. I killed the desk lamp. Candles flickered. Footsteps crept toward the dining room. Brittany appeared in the doorway, hair wild, eyes glittering. She held her phone, recording. "Working late, ladies?" she purred, panning the camera across documents. "Conspiring?" Abigail rose slowly. "It's called due process. Filming without consent is illegal," I added. Brittany laughed. "So is elder abuse. Funny how perspectives shift." She stepped closer, phone trained on me. "Tell your lawyer niece how you tried to starve us, cutting groceries, selling our car, screaming threats in the attic." "That's slander," Abigail said. Brittany shrugged. "Prove it." Abigail extended her hand, calm as leveled water. "Delete the footage." "Make me." A tense silence. Then Abigail smiled, a slow, predatory curve. "Gladly." She reached forward, swift as a striking heron, snatched the phone and slipped it into her blazer pocket. Brittany gasped. "That's assault." "Self-defense," Abigail said. "Your flash nearly blinded me." Brittany's lips curled, but before she could retort, Marcus's voice drifted from the hallway. "Britt, what's going on?" He stepped into the candlelight, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When he saw the tableau, files, coffee rings, Brittany empty-handed, his expression crumpled. "Brittany, please," he whispered. "Not again." She spun on him. "She's stealing my phone." Abigail tossed it to Marcus. "Factory reset if you value privacy. Good night." Brittany stormed off, muttering curses. Marcus lingered, eyes on me. "Mom, why is this happening?" I touched his jaw, a gesture from childhood. "Because love without boundaries breeds parasites, son. I'm drawing lines to save us both." Tears shimmered. He nodded once, then followed his wife upstairs. Abigail sighed. "He's torn." "He'll choose," I said. Storms reveal true north. By sunrise, the rain subsided. Mist rose from sodden fields like ghosts. Abigail left for the clerk's office, motions in hand. I brewed tea, the simple ritual grounding me to ordinary life. At 8, a black SUV rolled up. 2 men in charcoal, suits stepped out, umbrella shielding a stern woman clutching a leather portfolio. Brittany greeted them on the porch, cheeks flush triumph. I recognized the woman's name from the petition. Court-appointed evaluator. Brittany caught my eye through the window, mouthing the word checkmate again. I opened the door before they knocked. "Mrs. Larkspur?" the evaluator asked. I nodded. "Dorothea, please, come in." We sat in the parlor. She asked orientation questions. Date, president, count backward by sevens. I answered with crisp precision. Brittany hovered, feigning concern. "Mom's been under strain," she interjected. "Erratic mood swings, insomnia." I turned to the evaluator. "I sleep fine when guests respect quiet hours." Brittany flushed. The evaluator jotted notes. Next came physical tests. Grip strength, balance on one foot. I performed each with steady competence. Behind me, Brittany's size grew sharper. Finally, the evaluator asked for medication lists. I produced neatly labeled bottles. Brittany thrust a crumpled bag forward. "She hides these upstairs. Sedatives." I took the bag, turned it over. Cat tranquilizers, outdated antibiotics, and a prescription in Brittany's maiden name. "I don't own cats," the evaluator said. I lifted Marley onto my lap. "Except this one. His meds are current. Those," I pointed to Brittany's bag, "were planted during last night's break-in." The evaluator's brow furrowed. "Break-in?" "Hence, the sedation supplies," I said calmly. "For self-defense," Brittany sputtered. "She's twisting facts." The evaluator closed her notebook. "I'll file my report." Brittany lunged. "But—" The evaluator raised a hand. "Thank you, Mrs. Larkspur." She exited, umbrella aloft. The suited men followed. Brittany whirled on me. "You sabotaged everything." "No," I said. Truth did. She advanced until inches remained between us. Her perfume, jasmine and spite, filled my nostrils. "You think you've won? Guardianship was plan B. What's plan A?" She smiled, lips thin as razor wire. "Ownership transfer. Your signature forged. Deed already notarized." My stomach flipped. "That's felony fraud." She shrugged. "Only if proven." I felt the room pitch. Then Abigail's Jeep screeched. Into the drive, she burst in, waving certified papers. "Emergency injunction granted," she announced. "Guardianship petition frozen pending investigation." Brittany's smile faltered. Abigail strode forward, eyes blazing. "And I subpoenaed. Golden Horizon. You've been skimming their elderly inheritance clients for influencer content." "Audit forthcoming." Brittany backed away. "You have no proof." Abigail held up Brittany's phone, which she had cloned earlier. "Screenshots say otherwise." Brittany's face drained of color. Marcus descended the stairs, suitcase in hand. "Britt," he murmured. "We need to go." She spun. "You're leaving with me?" He swallowed. I need space to think." Her eyes widened. "After everything?" He looked at me, tears brimming. "Mom, can I stay with Agnes for a bit?" I nodded. "Of course." Brittany's world tilted. She grabbed the suitcase. "Fine, I'll pack my own things." Marcus shook his head. "No, you can't stay here anymore." He turned, walked out the door, and the suitcase wheels crunched gravel. Brittany's breath came in ragged gasps. She glared at me. "This isn't over." I met her gaze steady as bedrock. "Storms pass, Brittany. Roots remain." She swept, past, heels clicking, and the front door slammed, a sound both violent and pitiful. 3 days later, the guardianship petition was dismissed. Fraud investigation opened. Brittany's influencer partnerships evaporated as brands fled scandal. She vanished into the city. Marcus stayed with Agnes, working day shifts at the lumberyard. Each evening he visited the porch swing. No craft, beer, just remorse. We spoke in cautious steps, rebuilding trust. I spent mornings clearing Brittany's decor from the living room, restoring Ernest's radio, rearranging furniture into a layout that breathed. Sunlight felt sweeter, but peace is fragile. One dusky Saturday, as swallows darted through orange sky, a certified letter arrived. Abigail opened it, brows knitting. It's from Horizon Bank, she said. Loan default notice. I frowned. Loan? Which? She scanned. A second mortgage, taken in your name last week. $200,000. My blood iced. Forgery. Abigail exhaled. They threaten foreclosure if we don't cure the default in 10 days. 10 days to stop Brittany from seizing the house through debt. Marcus approached, having heard. Mom, she must have used your social security details. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind rustle wheat, feeling the heartbeat of generations in every floorboard beneath my feet. This farm has weathered lightning, drought, and grief, I whispered. It will survive, Brittany. Yet as the sun dipped, I felt a darker tide rising, a force intent on swallowing the land whole. I turned to Abigail. We need every account flagged, every signature authenticated. She nodded. I'll pull all the stops. Night settled, thick as ink. I stood on the porch, staring down the drive where Brittany's taillights had last vanished, and sensed her plodding in shadow. The wind carried distant thunder, a new storm brewing beyond the horizon. I braced myself, knowing the next strike would not be subtle. Brittany would come for blood or nothing at all. Inside, the house lights flickered. A low rumble vibrated the window panes. It wasn't weather. It was the rumble of an approaching engine, headlights cresting the hill, unforgiving and bright. My heart stilled as the vehicle rolled closer, tires crunching gravel with predatory deliberation. The driver's silhouette, a woman's, sat stiff, hands gripping the wheel. Brittany. She cut the engine but left the headlights blazing, bleaching the porch in stark white. I stepped forward, spine straight as the maple trunk, and in the glare I saw her exit the car and raise a rolled stack of papers high above her head. Dorothea, she shouted across the dark. You can't hide. The clock's ticking. Lightning forked behind her, etching her outline in electric fire. She unfurled the papers, dozens, letting them flutter into the wind like poisoned confetti. Bank statements, loan agreements, my fake signature writ bold. I felt the ground tremble beneath my boots. Brittany's smile was a serrated blade, glinting. The storm unleashed a single thunderclap so loud it rattled my ribs, and in that instant, I knew. The final battle had arrived, and even the sky would bear witness to the unfolding war. The papers Brittany released spiraled across the yard. White feathers ripped from the wings of integrity and plastered themselves against wet grass, porch steps, and my boots. Each sheet bore my name and a signature I recognized, but did not write. The swoop of the L exaggerated, the crossbar on the T sliced with performative flourish. Forgery impersonates confidence, and Brittany's pen had never lacked nerve. I knelt, gathering documents sodden with drizzle, my hands steady despite the cold. Abigail stood beside me, flashlight beam bouncing over numbers that threatened to devour the farm like locusts. $200,000 principal, 11.4% balloon rate, default clause triggered. She inhaled sharply. Emergency injunction covers personal guardianship, not fraudulent liens, she whispered. Rain hissed against the Buick. Brittany leaned against the hood, shielded by a cobalt raincoat belted at the waist like armor. Headlights behind her cast her in silhouette. She looked like a cardboard cutout of triumph. Clock's ticking, she repeated, flicking cigarette ash into a puddle. 10 days, Dorothy. Then the bank owns your nostalgia museum. I spoke to Horizon this afternoon, I said. They require verification signatures in person. Brittany's grin sliced wider. Funny thing about small-town banks, they value notarized mail even more. Remote verification, see? Efficient. I rose, dripping pages in hand. Notarized by whom? She tapped the side mirror. Friends in low places. Abigail stepped forward. Forgery is a felony. Even if you manipulated an online notary, metadata reveals IP addresses. Brittany shrugged. Then I'll claim identity theft. You're the tech whiz counselor. Trace it back to Marcus's laptop, perhaps. The threat landed square. She was ready to burn everyone to escape flames she lit. Lightning veined the sky. I turned, marched to the porch, and stuffed the documents inside a plastic evidence sleeve Abigail produced. Brittany's laughter chased. The thunder as she revved the engine and peeled away, mud spraying our ankles. The taillights vanished beyond the maples. The night fell silent except for the soft drip of water off gutter spouts. Abigail exhaled. We have 9 days. Then, we'd better start before sunrise, I said. We did not sleep. In the kitchen, we brewed coffee black as varnish and built a timeline pinned to the corkboard above the telephone. Dates of alleged signatures, IP logins gleaned from Horizon's digital correspondence, Brittany's location stamps on Instagram. Agnes arrived at dawn with blueberry muffins and the county recorder on speakerphone. By noon, half the town knew of Brittany's gambit and offered affidavits, store receipts proving my whereabouts on signing days, church bulletins with timestamps. Marcus came at lunchtime, cheeks hollow, eyes ringed by sleepless guilt. He carried a thumb drive. I found videos, he said, voice raw. Screen recordings of Britt forging e-signatures. Abigail plugged the drive into her laptop. We watched Brittany's manicured nails guide a stylus across a tablet screen, duplicating my signature while humming a pop song. She saved PDFs to a folder titled Exit Strategy. My stomach clenched. Marcus buried his face in his hands. I enabled two-factor on my accounts. She used my credentials. I laid a hand on his shoulder. You're choosing right now, son. That's what counts. Tears beaded on the wood grain beneath him. Abigail copied the files, encrypted them, and drafted a cease and desist to Horizon. She also contacted Special Agent Ruiz, an old law school friend now in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Ruiz requested every byte. Federal, I murmured. That escalates fast. Good, Abigail said. We need weight heavier than Brittany's theatrics. Day 2. A forensic document examiner from Columbus drove in, magnifying loops of ink on the alleged wet ink signatures. He confirmed inconsistencies in pen pressure and stroke order. Day 3. Horizon's compliance officer, spooked by talk of FBI subpoenas, agreed to suspend foreclosure pending full investigation. But Brittany did not retreat quietly. Day 4. I found my credit card limits maxed, charges for designer. Furniture shipped to an unknown address. We spent hours on hold with fraud departments, issuing disputes. Day 5, a sheriff's deputy delivered a harassment complaint Brittany filed, accusing me of menacing her with a firearm. I had none. Agnes's shotgun glinted in her foyer across the road. Brittany's lie crumbled under deputy's inspection, but paperwork still 8 hours. Each day brought a new cut intended to bleed our time. Night of day 6, I dreamed of Ernest. He stood under the maple, blue work shirt billowing, and pressed a brass skeleton key into my palm. Roots keep secrets, he whispered. I woke with a start, the phantom cold of metal lingering. Sunrise filtered taupe through storm clouds. Abigail snored softly on the couch, laptop balanced on her knees. I tiptoed to the back porch, drawn by tugging memory. The sugar maple loomed, leaves dripping last night's rain. At its base, an iron lockbox peeked through roots swollen like arthritic fingers. My breath caught. Ernest buried emergency cash once. For rainy days, he joked. Could it be? I fetched a spade, knelt, and pried the lockbox loose. Inside, a sealed envelope, dog-eared ledger, and a cashier's check dated 2008. Proceeds from the sale of Ernest's patent for a carpenter's angle clamp. The sum? $237,000. He never told me he encashed the patent. I staggered inside. Abigail jolted awake. Look, I whispered. He left a lifeboat. She blinked at the zeros. This pays the fraudulent loan and proves capacity. You discovered it. You plan to deploy it sensibly. Let's scorch Brittany's timeline, I said. We pay the debt before she swings the axe, remove the leverage. Abigail grinned. Horizon will accept funds any time. We drove to town in Marcus's pickup. The teller's eyes widened at the check. The manager escorted us to his office. 30 minutes later, the fraudulent lien sat neutralized. Paid in full under protest, flagged for restitution once Brittany's guilt confirmed. I walked out lighter, yet anger still simmered. Brittany would now be responsible for reimbursing me or face civil judgment. But more than money, I needed closure. Day 8 dawned bright. The house pulsed with a sense of impending reckoning. I baked a cherry pie, Ernest's favorite, because rituals fortify courage. Marcus nursed coffee, rehearsing statements for the grand jury affidavit Ruiz requested. At 4 p.m., Abigail received a call, her mouth set in a grim line. Brittany's been arrested, she said, covering the phone. FBI picked her up downtown carrying a suitcase of burner phones and $15,000 cash. Relief crashed over me. Too strong, almost painful. She's out on bail already, Abigail added. Her father posted it. She's headed here. A hum like distant locusts filled my ears. Then tonight ends it. Twilight draped the fields in violet. I waited on the porch, pie cooling beside me. Marcus sat on the swing, sturdy again. Headlights pierced dusk. Brittany's father's Cadillac rolled up. Doors slammed. Brittany strode forward, rage crackling like static. I have one question, I said before she spoke. Why the war? She snorted. Because entitlement doesn't trickle down, Dorothea. It's seized. You had family, I said softly. You chose plunder, she lifted her chin. Save the sermon. I'm here for my husband. Marcus rose. No, Britt, I'm here for Mom. Brittany's eyes glinted. Then you're a coward. He inhaled shaky. Maybe, but I'm done. Being complicit. She laughed, a brittle sound. Fine. Keep your antique farm. I'll keep the cash. She turned to leave. About that, Abigail said, stepping from the doorway with Agent Ruiz beside her, badge gleaming. You're under indictment for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Handcuffs clicked. Brittany's father protested. Ruiz silenced him with legal citations. Brittany hissed, eyes boring into mine. You think this saves you, but I planted seeds you haven't found. Rain began again, a gentle patter. Ruiz guided her to the car. She craned her neck, whispering, Something only Wynn caught. The door slammed. The car disappeared down the lane, red taillights swallowed by mist. I exhaled, a tremor leaving my bones. Marcus squeezed my hand. Abigail smiled, weary yet victorious. The porch light flickered, then glowed steady. In that golden wash, I believed the farm finally breathed ease, until my phone buzzed with an anonymous text. Check the basement. A cold wave rushed my spine. Marcus met my eyes. Mom? Let's see, I said, voice steady. We descended. Creaking stairs, flashlight beams slicing darkness. At the far wall, a new padlock secured the root cellar door. Fresh mortar rimmed cracks. Abigail examined it, brow furrowed. Why seal a cellar? She murmured. We cut the lock. The door groaned open, exhaling stale air tinged with gasoline. Flashlights swept across jerry cans lining the floor, wicks protruding. Makeshift incendiaries wired to a cheap timer counting down. 12. 00. 11. Run! Abigail shouted. We vaulted up the stairs. At the top, Marley streaked past. We lunged onto the lawn as a thunderous boom split the night. Flames belched from basement windows, painting the maple's leaves gold. I stared, numb, as smoke spiraled into the storm-scarred sky. Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus wrapped his arms around me. I'm sorry. So sorry. I held him, tearless, watching 35 years of keepsakes burn while the maple's silhouette stood defiant against the inferno. And I whispered to the blazing night, "If roots remain, walls can rise again." The fire crackled its reply, sparks soaring like fiery prayers into darkness. But as the first fire engine's lights crested the hill, I noticed something beyond the flames. Brittany's Cadillac, idling at the end of the drive, driver's side, Takra jar, and no one inside. She was still here. My heart drummed as I realized the war had not ended. It had merely changed its battleground, and I vowed, as the sirens screamed nearer, that the next move would be mine. Night collapsed around us in waves of smoke and sirens. Firefighters swarmed the yard, hoses uncoiling like anacondas, water thundering against flame. Sparks hissed and died, but a core blaze gnawed stubbornly within the cellar where Brittany's rage had sought to devour bone and memory alike. I stood with Marcus and Abigail beneath the old maple. Its leaves flickered orange from reflected firelight, yet held fast, roots anchoring deeper than malice. Sheriff Drumlin arrived, raincoat flapping, took one look at the jerry cans, and barked orders. Crime scene tape unfurled, neon yellow slicing. Knight Ruiz returned too, having doubled back when dispatch relayed the explosion. His jaw tightened at the charred remains. "Arson on top of federal fraud," he muttered. "She's escalating like a cornered animal." But Brittany had vanished, leaving only the Cadillac as phantom breadcrumb. Forensic lights scoured seats. For prints, deputies combed hedgerows, dogs sniffing wet grass. Dawn's first gray hinted at horizon when Drumlin admitted she slipped through. Marcus sagged, shame etched deep. I cupped his cheek. "Her choices aren't your chains?" He nodded, eyes glassy. By 8 a.m., flames subdued, basement gutted. The main structure scarred but standing. The farmhouse built of heart pine, Ernest hand-planed. Inspectors said walls were sound. The maple had shielded roof from collapse, branches catching debris like guardianship. Exhaustion tugged my limbs, but purpose kept me upright. Abigail liaised with insurance. Ruiz filed arson warrant. Marcus called contractors for emergency board-ups. Community rallied. Agnes brought quilts, church ladies delivered casseroles, even strangers arrived bearing lumber. Yet amid aid, unease thrummed, Brittany free, vindictive. At noon, Deputy Laird found tire tracks veering into the south pasture, ending at a broken fence post. Beyond lay the old irrigation ditch, a place Brittany once mocked as swamp aesthetic. Footprints led toward County Road. "She's on foot," Drumlin said. "Can't have gone far." Roadblocks erected, helicopter buzzed, but fields vast, hedges dense. Brittany was a hunter's daughter. She knew terrain. Afternoon heat steamed wet soil. I retreated to porch swing, feeling the ache of sleepless nights settling in bones. A gust rattled charred basement windows, releasing ember scent. I closed eyes, envisioned Ernest's steady hands rebuilding. Footsteps creaked. Marcus sat beside me. He held a charred picture frame, glass spiderwebbed. Inside, a photo of us, Marcus at age 6 holding a model airplane, Ernest behind him, me beside, laughter frozen in sunlit eternity. The edges blackened, but faces intact. "It survived," Marcus whispered. "So will we," I said, squeezing his hand. A deputy approached with a brown envelope, found this wedged under wiper of the Buick. Handwriting elegant, loops familiar. Brittany. I slid it open. Inside, a single Polaroid. Brittany in a motel room, holding my heirloom sapphire pendant against her throat. Beside her, tonight's newspaper, headline visible. Message scrawled at bottom. "Settle $500K or lose everything. You have 48 hours. Marcus's face blanched. Abigail cursed softly. Ruiz studied the image. Extortion. She's desperate. I stared at Brittany's eyes in the photo, Wild, rimmed with mascara smears, yet glittering with conviction that the world still owed her. A chill prickled. She would not stop until forced by consequence she feared. Abigail's phone buzzed. She answered, expression shifting to alarm. She ended call. The bank manager, someone tried to wire $500,000 from your liquidated patent funds to an offshore account. He froze it, suspicious. I inhaled slowly. Brittany's ransom amount. Matched. Social engineering, Abigail said. She'll keep probing. Ruiz paced. We need to locate her fast. Every motel within 30 miles we canvass. Drumlin dispatched units. Time bled. Sunset smeared crimson across clouds. No sign. That evening, as volunteers hammered plywood, over basement glass I brewed herbal tea for scorched throats. A small comfort. That's how community heals, one mug at a time. The kettle whistled. I poured, glanced at wall clock, froze. The pendulum lay still, batteries removed. I set tray down, scanned room. Desk drawer ajar, papers shuffled. Heart thudded. I walked hallway, kitchen window latch unhooked, muddy prints on sill. She had been in the house moments ago. I called Marcus and Ruiz. Deputies swept rooms. Pantry door hung open, revealing cellar steps still warm from firefight. On top stair lay my sapphire pendant, chain snapped, gemstone gleaming with quiet sorrow. Note beneath. Tick-tock. Ruiz radioed perimeter. No sighting. Abigail examined latch. She's taunting buying time. She wants me rattled enough to pay, I said. Marcus's voice shook. What if she escalates again? I lifted pendant, felt its cool fade, a relic of my mother, now weaponized. Rage smoldered. Then we end this on our terms. I turned to Ruiz. Can we trace burner phones from the motel Polaroid? He nodded. If we can isolate tower. Pings near timestamp. We gathered in living room, laptops glowing, Ruiz's tech kit humming. He requested cell provider logs. I provided Brittany's known numbers. Abigail triangulated FOIA requests. Hours ticked. Midnight approached. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. At 12:17 a.m., tower data zeroed to a rural sector south of Stonebridge, abandoned Hickory Valley Amusement Park, closed since '09. A perfect hideout. Deputies converged, Ruiz riding point. Abigail insisted I stay, but instinct clawed. She'll surrender only if I face her, I said. Marcus backed me, fierce. Reluctantly, Drumlin allowed us to follow in separate cruiser, armored vests donned. Moonless night cloaked the rusting, Ferris wheel as we arrived. We disembarked, flashlights slicing weeds. Carnival booths sagged like broken teeth. Wind moaned through funhouse slats. Split south, Drumlin ordered units. Eyes sharp. Marcus and I trailed Ruiz down midway. The scent of wet canvas lingered, ghost of cotton candy and laughter. My heart hammered, not from fear alone, but from the burden of what motherhood becomes when love must discipline evil. A clatter inside the fortune-teller booth. Ruiz signaled, weapon drawn. We flanked door. He counted. 1, 2, 3. Kicked. In empty. Only a blinking laptop streaming security cam feed. Our farmhouse live, crosshairs overlaying front porch. A pre-recorded voice. Brittany. Smoke from the basement fire lingered in the rafters for 3 more dawns. A faint charcoal perfume that clung to curtains and cupped itself in the corners of each rebuilt window frame. Every time I breathed, the memoria of Brittany's cruelty prickled the back of my throat, but I chose to treat it like incense, proof of a purifying flame rather than poison left behind. By Tuesday, the contractors had stripped the scorched joists, sanded back to unblemished grain, and the bones of the house gleamed pale as a baptismal font. Yet the letter from Horizon sat on the foyer table like a coiled copperhead. $750,000. Consolidated debt. Brittany's father, Mr. Howard Whitcomb III, had apparently leveraged our homestead as collateral in a private bail bonds underwriting deal 3 weeks before Brittany's arrest, forging my signature once more, but with the added imprimatur of his own investment firm, Whitcomb Financial Partners. Abigail spent the night cross-referencing SEC filings and discovered a trail of shell companies stacked like Russian dolls, each doll filled with spit and IOUs. Marcus paced the living room, cell phone glued to ear as he called number after number, credit bureaus, title registrars, media contacts. Between calls, he murmured apologies I no longer needed to hear, but he, perhaps, needed to speak. Guilt weighs less when spoken aloud. I let him shed pounds in syllables. Abigail's plan formed like steel cooling in air. We attack on 3 fronts, she said, listing with fingers. Civil injunction to freeze the new lien, criminal referral to state AG for organized fraud, and a publicity push. Sunlight is disinfectant. Whitcomb thrives in shadow. But first we needed breathing room. Ruiz helped expedite the injunction, yet it hinged on proving I did not consent. My pen had apparently traveled many miles without me. We needed a handwriting sample bank manager could not ignore. So Wednesday morning, I sat at the oak desk Ernest built, fountain pen in hand, copying paragraphs from Little Women, the same book I used to test Marcus's cursive in 4th grade. Ruiz filmed, Abigail notarized. My authentic loops stood calm and sturdy, miles away from the frantic flourish Whitcomb forged. By afternoon, Drumlin delivered good news. A judge granted a 10-day freeze on all Horizon action. The copperhead uncoiled, but still watched us from the desk. The next storm front was political. Whitcomb chaired the County Economic Development Board. He donated to both parties, sponsored hospital wings, hosted galas in Glass Towers 50 miles away. Stonebridge folk half believed he owned the moon. But small towns keep receipts, and Agnes remembered when Whitcomb foreclosed on her cousin's farm in '92, using a balloon payment clause nearly identical to my lien. We convened a tea and truth meeting in my kitchen. Agnes arrived with thick manila folders, followed by Pastor Jonah, 2 retired bankers, and a timid librarian named Myrtle clutching microfiche printouts. Over lemon bars, we pieced together a pattern. Whitcomb financed startups doomed by fine print, called in debts, acquired land, flipped parcels to out-of-state developers. For 30 years, he's strip-mined heritage, Jonah said. Your case could blow the dam. I looked around the table, faces lined by seasons, eyes alight with communal purpose, and felt a surge of determination stronger than any adrenaline spike Brittany had caused. This was no longer about me alone. It was about every family tree Whitcomb had tried to uproot. 2 days later, we drove to Columbus for the state attorney general meeting. The Capitol's granite facade rose like a judgment seat. Inside, Assistant AG Leela Xiang listened, brows knitting tighter as Abigail laid out forged docs, bomb squad reports, shell company diagrams. Xiang tapped a folder. If we prove conspiracy between Whitcomb and his daughter, RICO statutes apply. But we need direct communication, emails, texts. Marcus swallowed. My laptop. Brittany used it. Could there be logs? Xiang nodded. Get me the device. Our cyber unit will carve deleted data like archaeologists. We surrendered the laptop, and I surrendered a lockbox of receipts Whitcomb paid Brittany for consulting, payments, disguised as influencer sponsorships. The AG's office shuttered behind us, but Hope traveled home in the Buick's glove box. A signed memorandum of inquiry. Saturday dawned bright, air crisp with approaching autumn. Harvest fairs popped up along county roads, but our farmhouse hummed like a law office. Printer's word, volunteers scanned documents. Ruiz toggled call after call. A new name emerged. The Meridian Fund, a Cayman-registered entity funneling assets from Whitcomb's bail venture. Drumlin obtained a warrant to seize records at Whitcomb Financial Monday morning. Word traveled quicker than radio. Sunday, Night, a black SUV idled outside our mailbox, lights off. Marcus spotted it, phoned deputies, but the SUV slipped away. "We're poking the bear," Abigail warned. "And the bear's cornered," I replied. That evening, I found a white envelope. On the porch rocker, inside, a single pressed maple leaf and a typed note. "Roots burn, too." I felt the weight of threat, but also its miscalculation. Whitcomb had forgotten storms prune weak branches. The maple still stood after arson. I slipped the leaf into my ledger as evidence. Night swelled thick. I double-bolted every door. Marcus slept on couch with baseball bat. Marley prowled windowsills, tail twitching. At 2:13 a.m., glass shattered in the tool shed. Security lights flared. We dashed out, but the intruder had fled. They left behind a crowbar and a smoldering rag soaked in kerosene, failing to ignite, on damp shavings. I thanked heaven for humidity. "These are intimidation tactics," Rui said. "Keep documentation. We'll escalate protective detail." But I refused to let fear colonize my rooms again. Instead, I invited neighbors to camping. Chairs in yard, coffee thermoses in hand, dusk till dawn vigil. Stoic silhouettes ringed the farmhouse like a living palisade, the quiet murmur of community stronger than sirens. Monday morning, state troopers executed warrant at Whitcomb's headquarters. They confiscated hard drives, servers, flash drives, slipped into suits. News crews swarmed. By noon, Stonebridge Tribune ran headline: "Fraud Probe Targets, County Power Broker." Whitcomb held a press conference, flanked by lawyers proclaiming innocence. He framed me as confused by grief, blamed hackers for forged documents, blamed Brittany's mental health for the arson. Cameras captured his practiced frown, but behind it I saw unease, like a man thrown a lifeline woven of cobwebs. That night, Marcus received a voicemail. His former college roommate, now junior analyst at Meridian, warning that Whitcomb planned to shift remaining debt onto Larkspur Farm Holdings, LLC, a new shell filed that afternoon. Transfer could bypass freeze if completed before AG injunction widened. Time became a metronome ticking toward midnight signatures. Abigail and I raced to county clerk's office minutes before close. She filed a declaration of adverse claim. On the farm title, citing pending criminal investigation, effectively locking any transfer. The clerk stamped with weary bemusement. We left breathless but triumphant. Outside, lightning-lit bruised clouds. Storm again, literal this time. Rain started as we reached Buick. Marcus phoned. "Mom, Dad's here. Whitcomb." My pulse stumbled. "Where?" "Your driveway. Says he wants to speak with you alone." Deputies en route, but road washed. Delay. I gunned ignition, tires, spitting gravel toward home. Rain slashed windshield, wipers thrashed. Headlights carved tunnels in fog. At lane entrance, Whitcomb's silver Jaguar blocked path, hazards blinking. He stood beneath umbrella, suit immaculate despite deluge, like a businessman who believed paperwork could subdue weather. I parked, stepped out, rain-soaking hair. Abigail kept engine running 30 feet back. Whitcomb's eyes appraised me, calculating, cold. "Mrs. Larkspur, may we talk?" "Your paperwork threatens enough. Speak here." He offered thin smile. "I regret Brittany's actions. She's troubled. Let's resolve matters quietly. I'll release liens, pay rebuilding costs, if you recant accusations against my firm and daughter." Lightning snapped. I tasted ozone. "Your firm forged my name, torched my home, endangered my son. Truth stands." He sighed. "Dorothea. Reputations crumble slowly, then all at once. Yours included. There are rumors about your mental state." "Same rumors your daughter spread?" He shrugged. "Public only recalls smoke, not arsonist, except settlement." He extended a waterproof folder. Inside, cashier's check for $100,000 and NDA. I stared at ink-bleeding raindrops. 100,000 felt like gravel next to family marrow. I tore check in halves, then quarters, rain plastering pieces to mud. Whitcomb's jaw flexed. "You'll regret this." "Roots," I said. "Don't fear wind." Sirens grew. Patrol cars crested. "Hill!" Whitcomb slipped into Jaguar, wheels spitting spray as he roared off. Deputies arrived moments late. I filed statement. Abigail recorded plate, time. Rain eased. Thunder retreated like retreating drums. Tuesday, AG Xiang called with triumph. Forensic team found emails. Whitcomb instructing Brittany on forging remote notarizations, plus spreadsheets mapping loan flip timeline. RICO charges imminent. A grand jury would convene Friday. Relief spread like sunrise, but Mara, the timid librarian, phoned with urgent fear. She had uncovered property tax filings showing Whitcomb quietly acquired mineral rights beneath dozens of farms, mine included. If he couldn't seize surface, he'd drill below, rendering land worthless via fracking leases. Contracts executed years ago by prior land registrar he bribed. Oil is thicker than water. Greed persists under new skins. Abigail clenched fists. "Even if we jail him, rights stand legally, unless fraud proves pervasive." I closed eyes, inhaled the scent of salvage lumber, heard hammering on roof. Then we show pervasive. We spent 2 delirious days scanning dusty courthouse boxes, interviewing elder farmers, amassing deposition stack high as seed sacks. Dozens attested registrar-forged signatures, always under Whitcomb's direction. Thursday midnight, hailstones drummed roof as I finished sworn affidavit number 53. My fingers cramped, but spirit soared. Evidence coalesced into mosaic. Clear enough for any juror, a dynasty of theft disguised as business, exhaustion weighed heavy, yet I found moment to stand under maple, hail-pinging leaves. I whispered to Ernest that justice sprouted. A twig snapped behind me. I turned. Marcus in raincoat, holding small black device. "Found this wired under porch," he said, voice trembling. "GPS tracker. Jaguar brand." We stared at each other, realization stark. Whitcomb had eyes on house all along. Fear like thin ice cracked beneath feet. If indicted, what lengths would he travel to silence us before testimony? We alerted deputies. Tracker bagged for prints. Ruiz arranged round-the-clock patrol. But I slept little, dreams haunted by engines idling just beyond tree line. Friday morning, courthouse buzzed under fluorescent haze. Farmers in Sunday suits packed benches, press crowded aisles. Grand jury proceedings sealed, but corridors brimmed with whispered hope. Abigail testified, then me. Questions came measured, drilling for certainty. I spoke of signatures I never wrote, bombs in cellars, fire in basement. My voice did not tremble. It resonated with generational ballast. When I exited, an elderly woman squeezed my hands. "For Alma Farm," she said, tears shining. Hours later, AG Xiang emerged. True bill on all counts. Wire fraud, racketeering, aggravated arson conspiracy. Warrant for Whitcomb's arrest signed. Applause erupted. But victory tastes like copper when predator still loose. Deputies failed to locate Jaguar at office or mansion. Phone off. Credit cards dormant. "He's running," Ruiz muttered. State police issued BOLO. Border Patrol alerted. Yet dusk fell with no capture. Back home, community gathered for celebratory potluck on lawn. Cider, fiddle tunes, bonfire beyond charred basement. Joy danced in wind. I smiled, but gaze kept scanning shadows between cars. Near midnight, folk departed. Lights clicked off. House settled. I checked every lock, kissed Marcus's forehead where he dozed over spreadsheets and climbed stairs. At landing window, moon shone silver over fields. Something glinted by maple roots. A reflection? I squinted. Faint shape of man crouched. Metallic sheen at waist. My heart stuttered. I crept to bedroom, retrieved Ernest's old signaling flare, the one he kept for tractor accidents. I descended quietly to kitchen, slipped out back door. Grass wet chilled soles, wind rustled grain. The shadow advanced toward basement hatch, the patch we had boarded. I lit flare, red blaze hissed, bathing yard. Whitcomb froze, crowbar in one, hand, jerry can in other, pistol holstered. "Step away!" I commanded. Voice a cannonball roll. His features, washed crimson by flare, twisted in desperation. "You're ruining a legacy, Dorothea!" "Your legacy of theft ends tonight," he lifted crowbar. Flame reflection danced on steel. Too close for comfort. Behind me, porch light snapped on. Marcus emerged wielding hammer. Abigail dialed 911. Whitcomb's gaze darted, cornered again. He flung jerry can at flare. Gasoline splattered, flame whooshed up like angry spirit. I dropped flare, dodged sideways. Sudden fire roared between us. He sprinted toward trucks parked along lane. Marcus chased. I yelled to stop. But Whitcomb vaulted fence, vanished into corn rows. Sirens approached. They'd lose him in maze of stalks. I smothered flare fire with wet burlap. Deputies arrived too late once more. Ruiz growled. He won't quit. Storm clouds gathered anew, wind whispering through corn like conspiratorial hiss. Inside, I fortified windows, but sleep never visited. Dawn found me at kitchen table, ledger open, calculating resources for prolonged siege, legal, physical, emotional. Marcus entered, eyes red. "Mom, how does this end?" I closed ledger, met his gaze. With roots deeper than dynamite and hearts braver than bullets, he wants everything but the one thing he'll never own, our endurance. Lightning flickered far away. A prelude to final reckoning, and as morning rain began to fall, gentle yet relentless, I understood the lesson the maple had taught for decades. Water the scars, and new rings grow. The storm's climax loomed, but inside me, sap already surged toward next spring. End of Part 6. A hush settled over Stonebridge like the moment between the strike of a match and its flare. Everyone knew Howard Whitcomb was cornered, nursing the wounds of indictment, but no one knew when he would lash back or if he would slip away for good. The sheriff's office erected roadblocks at all county exits. Federal marshals watched airports. Yet the Jaguar remained a phantom, and the man who once autographed gala programs with a fountain pen dipped in arrogance had dissolved into the cornfields. I sensed him amid the rustling stalks, even when deputies found no trace. His contempt hovering like gnats at dusk. Each creak of barn door, each snap of twig outside my bedroom window at night, echoed through my nerves. But fear, I realized, is only as powerful as the space we lend it. I began to keep the farmhouse lit well into the night, porch bulbs glowing, like sentry lamps, not to ward him off, but to deny him darkness as an ally. On the fourth night after the flare incident, Ruiz returned with canine unit. They tracked faint petroleum scent southeast, past creek, and through an abandoned tobacco barn. Inside, they discovered maps of the county drainage system, post-it notes marking storm sewer access shafts, and bolt cutters. Whitcomb planned tunnels, escape routes, or perhaps infiltration lines. "He's treating the landscape like a battlefield," Ruiz said. "And he underestimates the defenders," I replied. While law enforcement hunted, Abigail and I prepared for courtroom combat. Grand jury indictment meant trial ahead. Prosecutors asked me to testify not just to fraud, but to a decades-long pattern of predation that left families bankrupt. I spent mornings recording video depositions with farmers who couldn't travel, Alma's nephew, Jonah's niece, Myrtle's parents. Their stories braided into a rope strong enough to drag entire juries toward justice. Marcus, meanwhile, labored beside neighbors rebuilding basement joists. Each hammer strike echoed like gavel banging guilt into oak. He found healing in the rhythm. I found hope in watching him. Insurance adjusters approved restoration. Community raised additional funds. For the first time since Brittany's coup, I pictured the farmhouse fully whole. Fresh whitewash, blue shutters, window boxes bursting, marigolds. Yet part of me held back from planting seeds while storms still brewed. Saturday dawned with coppery sky. I sifted through Aaron's list when phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Silence, then a low voice. You think prosecutors can protect you? The line clicked dead. I set phone down without shaking. Intimidation again, but stale script. Grew weaker each repetition. I recorded threat, forwarded to Ruiz. An hour later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, my torn pieces of Whitcomb's $100,000 check now laminated into a placemat. A note. Your refuse will become your ruin. Marcus clenched jaw. Abigail rolled eyes. He's spiraling, she said. Cornered narcissists belch theatrics. Nevertheless, we heightened security. Deputies rotated 24-hour shifts. Neighbors maintained watch from front porch like old-time fire wardens. Sunday evening, church bells tolled. Pastor Jonah preached on Psalm 46. Though the earth give way, we will not fear. The congregation nodded toward me more than scripture, and I drew strength from their silent amens. Back home, twilight painted wheat fields bronze. I brewed chamomile. Marcus set chessboard on kitchen table, a ritual from his childhood insomnia. Days. We played by lamplight, cats curling at feet. Halfway through game, headlights swung across window. Deputies' shift change, I assumed, but moments later, power flickered out. Chess pieces froze mid-battle. Darkness pressed in. Backup generator failed to kick. Marcus rose, heading for fuse box. A thud at front door halted him, heavy, deliberate. Sheriff? He called. Silence. Another thud, then a hiss of propane and glass crack. We sprang back as tear gas canister rolled across foyer, spewing acrid plume. Eyes burned. Coughing, we stumbled toward kitchen rear door. A second canister clanged off. Stove! Out window! I rasped. Marcus smashed screen, helped me through into herb garden. We crawled across basil and mint, gas-stinging lungs. Yard lights still glowed thanks to separate circuit. Silhouettes moved near porch, 2 figures in tactical gear. Not deputies, they bore no badges. We hunkered behind rain barrel. My eyes streamed. But vision pierced enough to see crowbars in gloved hands prying boarded basement where fresh joists lay. Marcus whispered, They want to finish what Brittany started. I clutched his arm. Or retrieve something. We heard banging inside, searching, not burning. They rifled boxes, yanked tarps. Marcus reached for phone. Signal jammed. Dead zone. The intruders likely carried cell jammer, but they hadn't. Cut old landline. I sprinted along house shadow, slipped through pantry door, gagging on residual gas, crawled to hallway where rotary phone hung. I dialed 0, operator still works in Stonebridge, and croaked, Home invasion, Larkspur Farm. Operator. Recognized voice, patched to drumlin. I barely whispered address before footfalls thumped overhead. I cradled receiver, crept toward parlor, grabbed fireplace poker. A figure descended cellar stairs, lugging duffel. Masked, broad-shouldered. He turned, saw me, raised stun gun. I swung poker, connecting with wrist. Device flew. He lunged. We grappled, crashing into quilt rack. His mask shifted. Stranger, not Whitcomb. He shoved me. My back hit wall. Pain radiated but anger stronger. I jabbed poker navel deep. He doubled, gasping. Marcus burst in. Swung antique lamp at intruders. Head. Lamp shattered. Intruder collapsed. Second invader shouted upstairs, footsteps retreating through broken front door. Tires squealed outside. Marcus tied unconscious man's wrists with extension cord. Deputies arrived minutes later. EMT revived suspect. Ex-military security contractor hired by Whitcomb. as Ruiz later uncovered. Inside duffel, we found dossiers, photos, of every witness, deposition schedules, maps to their homes, and a brick of C4 with timers. They intended to plant evidence of violent plot, discredit case, maybe worse. Sheriff Drumlin's fury cracked like thunder. "This is terrorism," he said. A.G. Xiong filed supplementary charges, federal protective custody extended to witnesses, Stonebridge Community Center converted to command hub. I spent night at Sheriff's substation, lungs still raw. Marcus stayed, too, guilt-heavy. I held his hand, whispered, "We fight on." Morning delivered bittersweet remedy. News broke of Whitcomb's failed exfiltration. State troopers spotted Jaguar near River Ferry. He abandoned car, swam across, but drone. Thermal picked him in reeds. Marshals apprehended him clutching waterproof briefcase containing passports, diamonds, and USB wallet with cryptocurrency. Footage of him in cuffs flooded screens by noon. My phone chimed endless messages of relief, yet I did not exhale fully. I'd lived long enough to know serpents writhe even when head-pinned. Sure enough, legal maneuverings surfaced. Whitcomb's lawyers filed emergency motion claiming invasion team unauthorized rogue element, disclaiming knowledge, seeking bail citing health issues. Judge scheduled hearing Wednesday. Abigail prepared opposition. Ruiz compiled intel linking contractor invoices to Whitcomb's offshore account. We rehearsed statements, again. Tuesday twilight. I visited Mapletree alone. Chainsaw marks marred bark where Brittany's earlier bomb blast charred wood, but new buds already sprouted. I pressed palm to trunk, felt sap hum. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we end generational theft." The tree stood silent sentinel. Wednesday courthouse overflowed with media. Bail hearing commenced 9 a.m. I sat behind prosecution, shoulders squared. Whitcomb entered shackled orange jumpsuit, yet eyes retained boardroom arrogance. He scanned room, our gazes locked. He smiled, faintly, a gambler still believing in last card. Defense claimed medical heart condition, presented doctor letter. AG argued flight risk, violent intimidation. Ruiz testified about tear gas invasion. Contractor's plea deal named Whitcomb. Abigail introduced ledger connecting payments. I testified last. I spoke of crowbar nights, burning floors, forged debts, bombs on Ferris wheel. I spoke of community uprooted, but also of resilience. Courtroom grew hushed. Whitcomb stared ahead, jaw tight. Judge recessed for decision. Hushed chatter swelled. I sat beside Marcus. He squeezed my fingers. Judge returned, voice firm. Bail denied. Defendant remanded. Gavels struck. Applause erupted subdued but irrevocable. Whitcomb's shoulders sagged. Marshals led him past me. He paused, whispered, "Roots rot from within," I said quietly, "only when poisoned." He smirked, but I saw fear flicker. That evening, protective details eased, but we kept porch lights bright. Community arrived with shovels, seedlings, symbolic replanting. We sowed dogwood, lilac, and a young elm near maple. Children pressed seeds, elders sang hymns. Healing took root visibly. After sunset, we shared stew around bonfire. Pastor Jonah led toast. To Dorothea, whose spine straight as cedar saved us all. Cheers and tears followed. As embers glowed, Agnes nudged me. "Remember your promise. Trip to the seaside once this all settles." I chuckled. Perhaps spring. Stars. Glittered. Air smelled of pine and redemption. Yet a stillness hung. A sense of page half-turned. Brittany awaited sentencing. Whitcomb faced trial. Shell companies needed unwinding. But for first time, future felt like terrain we could till, not minefield, we must tiptoe. Marcus produced envelope. "Mom, found this when clearing smoke damaged." Attic box. Inside lay Ernest's last letter, dated week before heart attack. Hands shook as I unfolded paper. He wrote of love, perseverance, and a final line. If life's storms batter you, remember, rebuild bigger porches so more friends fit under your roof. Tears blurred ink. I read aloud. Laughter and applause rippled. Looked around. Neighbors shoulder to shoulder, porch lights glowing. Ernest's wisdom already realized. Yet as I turned letter over, a postscript emerged faintly by moonlight. Maple roots run deeper than well. Beneath parchment, indentations formed a sketch. Crudely drawn underground cache location beyond tree. Roots. My breath caught. I tucked letter away, mind racing. Ernest, secretive carpenter, might have hidden more than the patent check. Perhaps documents, or a safe deposit key, or generational savings untouched. Opportunity to fortify farm forever. Resolved to excavate at first light. Dawn, pale rose, found me with spade beneath maple. Marcus, Abigail, and Agnes stood witness as I dug at spot Ernest's sketch indicated. 7 inches down, metal thunked. We uncovered brass strongbox sealed with wax. Inside, deeds from 1890s verifying mineral rights originally excluded from all sales. The Larkspur lineage retained subsurface ownership. Whitcomb's fracking scheme legally impossible. Also, bearer bonds worth $400,000 and a letter. For crises only, love Ernest. Joy whooped. Tears flowed. Abigail recorded discovery. AG prepared motion to dismiss mineral liens. We would not. Just defend the farm. We would endow it. Evening News plastered headlines. Hidden strongbox topples fraud scheme. Whitcomb empire crumbles. Stocks of his public companies plummeted. Shareholders filed class action. Stonebridge gazed at television sets, jaws dropped. Yet I felt no triumph nectar, only quiet gratitude and a soft ache for people lost too. His greed. Nighttime breeze carried hint of winter. Leaves rustled lullaby. Marcus stoked fireplace in newly repaired basement den. I sat at cedar table, pen poised over fresh notebook titled Reconstruction Plan. Abigail poured tea, steam curling like question marks smoothed into certainty. We plotted scholarship fund for local kids, low-interest seed loans for farmers, restoration of amusement park into public garden, the same wheel that had once burned. Would revolve as sculpture of resilience. It was past midnight when phone buzzed, a collect call from county jail. Brittany. I hesitated, then accepted. Her voice wavered. Dorothea? Court-appointed counselor says I need restitution plan. I'm sorry. Dad's lawyers sold me out. I have nothing. Silence churned between us. I answered, You have the chance to learn growth. That's priceless but costly in pride. Start. There, she sobbed softly. Do you hate me? I hate what greed made of you. I believe what humility might remake. A guard voice intruded. Time. Call ended. I set receiver down, heartbeat calm, as though final knot loosened. Upstairs, wind rattled shutters, yet sounded almost like applause, house acknowledging closure while awaiting coda. But deep inside I sensed one more chapter before dawn of true peace. A court verdict. Yes, but something more intimate. Marcus's path toward forgiveness of himself, and my own handing over of farm stewardship to next generation. As clock chimed 1, I closed notebook, blew out lamp, and whispered to walls. Almost there. The farmhouse creaked content reply. Outside, the maple's branches traced silhouettes against starlight. No longer battle scars, but a cathedral spire pointing toward hope, yet unwritten. End of Part 7. The first real frost arrived 2 days after I unearthed Ernest's strongbox. White crystals dusted the wheat stubble, lacing each blade like delicate handwriting from winter itself. The farmhouse seemed to exhale, a long-held breath misting. away under pearl gray dawn. For the first time since Brittany and Howard Whitcomb had trespassed the future, I woke feeling neither hunted nor hollow. Instead, I felt curiously weightless, as though every burden I'd carried for months had thawed into the frosty air, clinking softly like ice dropping into a glass of sweet tea. Yet weightlessness is its own sort of vertigo. I stepped onto the porch in my robe, mug trembling from cold, and the knowledge that the final reckoning still waited on the courtroom docket. Whitcomb would face arraignment on racketeering and domestic terrorism in 4 weeks. Brittany's sentencing recommendation was in progress. The community's class action property suit loomed like a gathering snowfall. We were on the cusp of closure, but cliffs are most dangerous at the very edge. The courthouse had asked me to prepare a victim impact portfolio, letters from neighbors, business ledgers, cost of rebuild estimates, and of course, my own personal narrative. The mere thought of distilling the chaos into bullet points left my stomach in queasy knots. How do you itemize the taste of smoke, the crack of a crowbar at 2:13 a.m., the sight of your life's keepsakes tumbling into a gasoline glow? How do you quantify the silence that settles in your son's eyes when he realizes he handed the matchbook to the arsonist he loved? I put on Ernest's old flannel jacket, heavy with cedar scent, and walked the perimeter of the property as the sun climbed. Each step turned frost to steam, and I pictured every neighbor who'd stood sentinel through nights of fear. Agnes with her quilted parka and pump-action courage, Pastor Jonah murmuring psalms, Myrtle clutching her flashlight like a candle, in a catacomb. Their faces warmed me more than the jacket. By the barn, Marcus and a volunteer crew were hanging fresh siding milled from storm-felled walnut trunks. He saw me, lifted a hand in salute, then kept hammering in a steady rhythm that reminded me of lullabies. The lines around his eyes had softened since Whitcomb's arrest, though midnight guilt still nested under them. He insisted on paying for half the repairs with wages from the lumber yard. He'd even sold his unused gaming console to buy paint. Remorse channeled into muscle memory. Every nail he drove declared his allegiance to renewal. Inside the house, Abigail occupied the dining room table, now permanently converted to war room. Tri-fold poster boards of timelines, witness charts, color-coded flowcharts of shell companies, and sticky notes quoting statutes like pieces of candy-wrapped justice. She raised a brow over her laptop as I entered. "Good morning, General," she said, sliding over a mug of peppermint tea. "Lieutenant?" I replied, managing a smile. She gestured to my victim impact binder, empty except for Ernest's original land deed and a pressed maple leaf, the threat note from Whitcomb now turned talisman. "We outline today," Abigail decreed, "or the prosecution will draft something clinical. The jury needs Dorothea, not spreadsheets." We sat side by side, sunlight slanting across the table, and I began recounting everything. Chronological, emotional, visceral. She typed, pausing only to ask, "How did that moment feel?" Or, "What scared you most right then?" Sometimes I answered calmly. Sometimes the words wobbled out like a newborn calf. When tears blurred my vision, she squeezed my hand and kept typing, the world's most compassionate court reporter. At noon, Ruiz arrived in plain clothes, half-eaten apple in hand, bearing news. Forensic accountants finished. They've mapped 87 fraudulent titles, 16 shell companies, and a Cayman vault of stolen equity worth $13 million. Jury will see the whole rotten tree. That tree had deep roots. Murmured. "Roots can be severed," Ruiz said. "We're the saw." He produced a sealed envelope. "Also, Federal Victims Fund paperwork. Could reimburse your rebuild fully." I waved it away. "The community has rebuilt me. Use the fund for families still mired in ruin." Ruiz nodded, eyes reflecting respect. That afternoon, Marcus asked to drive me to county jail for a face-to-face with Brittany. She'd requested it through her counselor, citing restorative justice guidelines. Abigail frowned at the idea. Emotional ambush, she warned. But I sensed Marcus needed the encounter to lance the last abscess of guilt. The jail's visitation wing smelled of institutional disinfectant and stale regrets. We sat at a steel table under flickering fluorescence while Brittany was let in, shackled but dressed in a loose gray jumpsuit instead of orange. Pre-trial comforts for those with high-priced lawyers. She looked 10 years older, cheekbones, sharpened by worry, mascara long washed away, but a ghost of her once unassailable poise remained. She slid into the chair opposite us, eyes dropping to her cuffed hands. When she looked up, her voice cracked like thin ice. "Marcus, Dorothea." Neither of us spoke. The silence grew until it filled the room like floodwater. Brittany swallowed. "I've been sober 38 days now," she whispered. "Turns out, vodka and revenge were my twin hobbies." A bitter smile twitched. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I say it anyway." Marcus's knuckles whitened on the tabletop. "You nearly killed Mom. You could have killed me." She nodded, tears pooling. "I know. I keep seeing the flames. In the restorative program, they make you watch footage of your crimes. The cellar fire, the Ferris wheel. I hear you shouting 'run' and me laughing like a villain from a show." She shuddered. "So yes, I'm sorry." I let the apology settle. Forgiveness is soil that needs time to break down toxins. But I could plant seeds. "Brittany," I said softly, "are you willing to testify against your father?" Her eyes widened. They offered plea reduction if I cooperate, but I was scared." "Scared of him?" Marcus asked, a helpless laugh. "Scared of losing?" The version of me that believed in his power. I used to think if I just orchestrated perfectly, life would kneel. Now I see I knelt to corruption instead. I reached across and laid a fingertip lightly on her wrist chain. Truth is freedom, and our family needs freedom more than revenge. Brittany's lower lip quivered. She nodded. "I'll testify. Full disclosure, no deals, no lies." Marcus exhaled as though releasing a boulder he carried since the day she charmed him freshman year. His shoulders sank, then squared. "I loved you," he said. "Part of me probably always will. But love without honesty is like a counterfeit check. Worthless. Once examined, she wept silently, chains clinking like wind chimes of remorse. Guards signaled time. As they led her away, she paused. "Dorothea, can I write you?" Not to plead, just to show progress. I surprised myself by nodding. Right. Whether I answer or not, right. I wanted her accountability documented for her sake. Even if healing never crossed jail walls, it might bloom inside them. Back home, we found the farm buzzing like a beehive. A convoy of reporters had arrived unannounced, eager for interviews about the Strongbox discovery and the upcoming civil fraud trial. Agnes intercepted them at the gate with a lemonade jug and a lecture on courtesy, but they eventually reached the porch. Abigail handled them, issuing measured statements, but their presence reminded me that privacy had become a rare commodity. I preferred to cultivate it like shade beneath the maple, rationed to those who needed respite, not spectacle. That evening, a thunderstorm rolled in, low and rumbling. We gathered in the nearly restored basement den, now insulated, freshly painted eggshell white, smelling faintly of plaster. Marcus unveiled a surprise, a digital projector salvaged from Heidi, the amusement park's old funhouse. He'd fixed it, and tonight he would stream old home videos he'd digitized from VHS tapes. We watched Ernest teaching toddler Marcus how to hammer a wooden birdhouse. Teenage Marcus receiving his first beat-up sedan, me dancing with Ernest in the kitchen to Ella Fitzgerald. The footage blurred with static, but laughter rang clear. Abigail sniffled. Marcus wiped eyes. I held a mug of cocoa and felt an ache, both sweet and jagged. Grief that Ernest couldn't witness our victory, gratitude that his foresight still guided us. At midnight, power flickered with the storm. The projector cut out, but the room stayed warm with candlelight. That's when Ruiz knocked, rain dripping off brim of his hat. He carried a flash drive. "Thought you'd want to see the last piece," he said. We crowded around Abigail's laptop. The drive contained decrypted chat logs between Whitcomb and a foreign venture capitalist codenamed Shoal. They outlined contingency plans. If indicted, stage a ransomware attack on Stonebridge County records to erase property deeds, then rebuild empire under new LLCs. The ransomware payload was to be triggered by a dead man switch set for November 1st, 5 days away. Abigail cursed softly. Even behind bars, he set dominoes. Ruiz ran a hand through rain-slick hair. "Our cyber unit needs local access to county servers to neutralize code. Problem? The servers sit in an unmanned building on Courthouse Square. Power grid sensitive. We need asset owner's permission." I stood. "Then we drive to the county clerk. Now." 20-minute rain-slick drive into Stonebridge Center. Old. Courthouse loomed, windows dark. The server annex smelled of dust and ozone. The night custodian, startled by Ruiz's badge, unlocked doors. We descended concrete steps into chilly data center, where a lone rack of humming servers stood sentinel. Ruiz's tech partner, Agent Morales, plugged in laptop, fingers flying over code. On screen, a countdown pulse. 4 days, 12 hours, 57 minutes. We watched digits tick. Morales cursed, encrypted worm deep. She deployed scripts, sweat beading on brow. Thunder rocked outside. Lights flickered. Backup UPS units kicked. A sense of stakes. Digital wildfire poised at matchstick. Hours crawled. At 03:14, Morales exhaled victoriously. Payload neutralized. Worm quarantined. Deed safe. Relief washed. I thanked her, voice hoarse. She smiled. "Protecting roots." "Ma'am." As we left, dawn brews paled to peach. Streets glistened under street lamps. I felt bone-deep fatigue but also serene inevitability. We had thwarted last sabotage. The final trial would be about accountability, not catastrophe. The following week, prosecution and defense wrangled over jury selection. Whitcomb's lawyers pushed for change of venue citing media bias. Judge denied. Abigail coached me for cross-examination. She insisted I not mention Brittany's apology. Jury must view crimes on their merits, unsweetened by personal sentiment. Agreed, though part of me carried Brittany's budding remorse like a secret seed in a coat pocket, best nurtured away from courtroom glare. 2 days before trial, I hosted the first meeting of the Larkspur Resilience Foundation. We'd used bearer bonds to seed endowment. Board comprised of Agnes, Jonah, Myrtle, lumberyard foreman, and a youth representative from the high school FFA chapter. Goal: small-town grants for farms in distress and scholarships for trade skills. Ernest's porch-bigger vision-taking. Root. During the meeting, a messenger delivered a notarized deed, Marcus transferring half his stake in the farm to Abigail in trust, acknowledging her stewardship acumen. I protested at first, but he reasoned, "I want to honor Dad's advice. Share the load so home never falls." Abigail's eyes watered. Family reforged. That night, I walked property one final time before trial. Stars glittered frostily. I paused beneath the maple. Leaves had half fallen, carpeting earth like golden coins. I knelt, pressed palm to wet soil, thanked the tree, Ernest, ancestors. Lightning bugs flickered even in chill, like tiny jury, of hope returning verdict of spring. At porch, Marcus waited, holding fresh-painted wood sign. Larkspur Legacy Farm, Estember, 1885. We hung it beside door. It glowed soft in lantern light, declaring past and future at once. I slept deeply, the first dreamless night in months. Trial day 1. Courtroom packed. I wore navy dress, Ernest's wedding band on chain around neck. Jury scanned me as I took stand. 12 strangers who would weigh decades of cunning against minutes of testimony. Assistant AG Xiang led gently. I spoke clearly, voice steady on facts. When she asked about emotional impact, I described cellar fire smoke, diary ashes, my son's tear-lined face. I saw jurors' throats bob. Some scribbled notes quickly. I ended by holding up pressed maple leaf. This leaf began as threat, I said. It ends as reminder. Storms prune, but roots deepen. Cross-examination came like winter gust. Defense tried to paint me as embittered matriarch seeking limelight. They flashed Instagram stills of me speaking to reporters, suggested I orchestrated community outrage for profit in our new foundation. I countered calmly, citing transparent bylaws and external audits. Defense faltered when AG produced ledger of Whitcomb's hush money offers. Courtroom murmured. Next witness, Brittany, escorted from detention center. She looked fragile but resolute, wearing plain navy blouse. She testified to father's instructions, forging tutorials, his scorn for hick persistence. Defense tried undermining her as jilted ex-daughter, but she produced chat logs as receipts. Jury watched her cry when describing Ferris wheel bomb, her voice breaking on, I saw Dorothea's eyes and realized I was about to become a murderer. Silence, thick. Trial lasted 6 days. Accountants, engineers, digital forensics experts, farmers. Each story wove tapestry of greed and resistance. During deliberation, community held vigil outside courthouse, candle flames flickering in December chill. I stood among them, mittened hands clasping Jonah's weathered ones, as snowfall drifted. After 9 hours, jury returned. Guilty on all counts. Court erupted, gasps, tears, clasped hands lifted to sky. Judgment scheduled for January, but judge remanded Whitcomb to maximum security pending. He passed me in shackles, his gaze no longer condescending, just empty. I whispered inwardly, let contrition plant where arrogance scorched. Outside, news cameras bright, but I stepped aside, letting victims speak. The old Alma farmer, the young welder whose apprenticeship vanished under fraudulent foreclosure. Their voices told story better than any headline. Back home, we celebrated quietly. Hot cider, walnut pie, laughter unrushed. Marcus proposed building guest cottages for agritourism, profits funding scholarships. Abigail loved idea, penciled budgets on napkin. At midnight, I climbed attic stairs. Through dormer, the maple stood bare but majestic. I whispered to winter stars, one more part, then rest. End of part 8. Snow kept its promise that night, unfurling across Stonebridge like pages of unwritten forgiveness. By morning, 4 inches layered fields in quiet splendor. The farm wore a white shawl, and the maple's bare branches caught sunlight, scattering diamonds across drifts. I brewed coffee, opened kitchen window a crack, inhaled the crisp shimmer, and felt every lungful scrub away residue of fear. Trial victory reverberated through Ohio news cycles, but real triumph felt smaller, homier, the sound of Marcus humming. While sanding window casings, the rattle of Abigail's keyboard summarizing nonprofit filings, the contented purr of Marley sprawled on sun-warm floorboards that no longer smelled of smoke. Yet one more courtroom awaited. Sentencing. Justice. Tasted incomplete until judge assigned weight to crimes, until repayment plans banked overshadowed souls. I dreaded revisiting trauma, but knew closure required returning to Scar one last time. January arrived brisk, carrying both blessing and burden. The farmhouse reconstruction reached final phase. Painters coated clapboard in cloud white. Roofers installed charcoal shingles, and local artisans carved porch balusters shaped like maple leaves. Each nail thwack echoed forward, not backward. Correspondence from Brittany trickled weekly, handwritten letters describing 12-step milestones, apology essays, therapy insights. I skimmed them, replied sparingly but honestly. Marcus visited, her monthly, sometimes leaving halfway crying, sometimes hopeful. Healing, like winter thaw, advanced in fits. Meanwhile, Whitcomb's legal team filed Hail Mary appeals citing judicial bias due to my community activism. Appeals court denied. Sentencing date confirmed, January 28th. Victims could address court again. I wrestled with whether to speak, my earlier testimony sufficient perhaps, but deep inside, a different message brewed, one not for jury but for Whitcomb's own marrow. On January 20th, Abigail and I attended County Commission meet to finalize mineral rights restitution. The board voted unanimously to void fraudulent leases and allocate penalties toward soil renewal grants. Farmers hugged each other in relief. Jonah prayed blessing. News cameras recorded, but the real footage played in tear-lined smiles. After meeting, a young woman approached shyly. Whitcomb's junior accountant, Sarah Delgado. She handed me a thumb drive. "These are internal memos about overseas land grabs," she whispered. I couldn't stay silent. Her voice quaked. I clasped her hand. "Courage is contagious," I said. She exhaled like shedding stones. We forwarded files to federal prosecutors. They opened an international probe, ensuring Whitcomb's empire disintegrated across borders. 2 days before sentencing, I woke to Marcus standing at bedside, cheeks flushed with urgency. "Mom, come downstairs," he whispered. I pulled on robe and wool socks and followed. In living room stood Pastor Jonah, Agnes, Myrtle, lumberyard foreman Dale, and a dozen neighbors. On coffee table lay a long wooden box wrapped in burlap, smelling of walnut and beeswax. Agnes gestured. "Open it." Inside, nestled in velvet, rested a handcrafted acoustic guitar. The soundboard was spruce from the maple limb lost to Brittany's bomb, its rosette inlaid with tiny copper leaves. The neck carved from Ernest's saved walnut beams. A brass plaque read, "For Dorothea, may your story always have strings to carry it farther." Tears pooled, hot on cold cheeks. I lifted the guitar. It fit like continuation of my arms. I strummed an open chord, warm, resonant. The room hummed in response. Jonah said, "We figured Roots can sing too." I vowed to play it at community events, maybe even start folk nights. On the rebuilt porch. Sentencing day dawned glass clear. I wore dark green suit echoing maple leaves. Courtroom huddled in winter coats. Whitcomb, thinner, shackled at waist, eyes less sharp. Brittany in navy jumpsuit sat in jury box as witness for prosecution, shackles removed to humanize her cooperation. Judge Chen, silver-haired with violinist posture, commenced proceedings. Prosecutor detailed losses. Millions defrauded, homes razed, lives upended. Defense asked leniency citing Whitcomb's philanthropy. Prosecutor countered, "Gifts funded by theft are not virtue." Victim statements followed. Alma's nephew spoke first, voice steady, forgiving. Myrtle's parents sobbed, describing foreclosure. After 8 testimonies, Judge asked if any others wished to speak. I rose. I walked to podium, palms calm, guitar strap across shoulder, instrument cradled. Murmurs fluttered. Judge raised brow, but nodded. I cleared throat. "Your Honor, words sometimes fail storms. Music can translate." I sat on witness chair, strummed gentle progression, an old Appalachian hymn Ernest loved. Notes floated, warm timber filling cold hall. I sang softly, "I once was lost, but now am found." Voices in audience joined, first Agnes, then Jonah, then others. Even juror number 6, tears streaming, hummed along. When final chord faded, I spoke. We are not here to crush a man beyond repair, but to declare that communities outsing greed. May justice strike the chord that allows restitution and genuine repentance. Judge's eyes glistened. She thanked me, asked bailiffs to escort guitar to bench so jury could inspect artistry from bomb scar timber. Symbol accepted into record. Judge. Chen read sentence. 50 years federal, minimum 30 without parole, plus $22 million restitution and asset forfeiture. Gasps. Brittany's sentencing to follow. 8 years with recommendation for therapeutic community placement and restitution. Service hours under Larkspur Foundation oversight. Judge allowed credit for testimony cooperation. Whitcomb stood, face chalk. He began to speak, some final defense, but words choked. Marshals led him away. He glanced at me once, expression unreadable. In that gaze I saw a crumbling edifice, bricks of arrogance tumbling in silent implosion. Brittany turned toward us, eyes brimming. Marcus offered slight nod. She mouthed, "Thank you." Then guards escorted her through separate door. Outside courthouse, sunlight dazzled on snow. Reporters swarmed, but I raised guitar, strummed same hymn once, wave of sound pushing microphones back. I said only, "Justice sings." And we walked away. Spring crept early that year. Greening tips sprouted late February. Crocuses peeked through melting drifts. Reconstruction finished. We hosted open farm celebration the very day county removed final charred waste bin. Guests toured new scholarship office in converted granary, where Brittany, released on supervised furlough, cataloged donor files as part of service hours. She greeted visitors quietly, served lemonade, her posture humble. I unveiled porch stage, walnut planks gleaming. Marcus and I performed first set, me on maple guitar, him on borrowed banjo. Laughter, foot stomps, children chasing fireflies. Returned lost magic to twilight. During intermission, Abigail read scholarship winners. 3 local students in agriculture, welding, and nursing. Their excitement overshadowed any lingering sorrow. Night ended with sky lanterns rising, each inscribed with message of resilience. I watched them ascend, gold against ink blue, felt Ernest's presence in warm breeze. Months passed. Brittany's progress report stayed earnest. She completed trauma therapy, speaking at high schools about consequences of greed. Her release. Hearing in 2 years looks promising. Marcus moved into renovated carriage house, managing agritourism cabins and woodworking classes. Abigail accepted faculty position at community college teaching legal ethics course titled Roots of Justice. I remain in main farmhouse, but not as sentinel, rather as gardener, weaving new quilts, writing memoir that maybe, someday, you'll hear beneath portico twined with wisteria. One June morning, foundation board convened under maple, now lush. Children from town kindergarten presented drawing, giant tree sheltering people holding hands. Under picture, "Thank you, Miss Dorothea." I pinned it to kitchen corkboard. That night, as cicadas chirred, I sat alone on porch, guitar across lap. I whispered gratitude to stars, to Ernest, to storms that made rings grow. Then I played a new tune, one I'd written called Debt Paid in Kindness. Melody floated across fields, into houses where neighbors fell asleep knowing tomorrow dawned safe. When last note faded, I set guitar aside, sipped chamomile, and closed my eyes. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.